After the human let her shield fall in fear, the cubs formed a circle. Until she raised it again, the transport ship crashed on the fourth moon of Velrix Prime during the worst storm the sector had seen in 40 years. When the smoke cleared and the emergency lights flickered their dying red glow, there was only one adult survivor. Her name was Elena Vasquez, a human cargo specialist who had been delivering medical supplies to the outer colonies. She was not a soldier. She was not trained for survival. She was just a woman who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But she was not alone. In the damaged cargo hold, 7 small figures huddled together in a broken containment unit. They were Korathi cubs, no older than 3 cycles, being transported to a refugee camp after their home world was destroyed by solar flares. Their fur was the color of silver moonlight, and their large eyes reflected the emergency lights like mirrors. They made small crying sounds, calling for parents who would never answer. Elena found them when she was searching for supplies. She stood in the doorway of the cargo hold, bleeding from a cut on her forehead, her left arm hanging at a wrong angle. The cubs looked at her with pure terror. To them, she was an alien. A strange creature with no fur, flat face, and forward-facing eyes like a predator. They had heard stories about humans, stories that said humans were dangerous, stories that said humans had once been hunters who killed for food. But Elena did not see dangerous aliens. She saw children, scared, crying children who needed help. She moved slowly toward them, speaking in a soft voice even though they could not understand her words. One by one, the cubs stopped crying. They watched her with curiosity as she knelt down and opened a ration pack. She offered them food, holding it out with her uninjured hand. The smallest cub, a female with a torn ear, was the first to come forward. She sniffed the food, then looked up at Elena with those big silver eyes. In that moment, something changed. Elena became their protector. The first week was the hardest. The moon was a frozen wasteland with temperatures that dropped below survivable levels at night. Elena found a cave system 2 kilometers from the crash site. She carried the cubs on her back in her arms, and sometimes dragging them on a makeshift sled made from wreckage. Her broken arm screamed with pain every step of the way, but she did not stop. She could not stop. The cubs depended on her. She used emergency thermal blankets to create a shelter inside the cave. She rationed the food carefully, always making sure the cubs ate first. When one of them got sick from the strange bacteria on the moon, Elena stayed awake for 3 days, using her limited medical knowledge to bring down the fever. The cubs survived. Elena collapsed from exhaustion immediately after. When she woke up, she found all 7 cubs sleeping around her, their small bodies pressed against hers for warmth. They had been watching over her while she slept. Elena cried for the first time since the crash, not from sadness, but from something she could not name. The Korathi cubs began to learn human words. They called her Elena in their high-pitched voices. They learned to recognize her expressions, to understand when she was happy or worried or tired. In return, Elena learned their names. There was Kira, the brave one with the torn ear. There was Thomas, the curious one who always wanted to explore. There was Sasha, the quiet one who rarely left Elena's side, and there were 4 others, each with their own personality, each with their own way of making Elena smile. The days turned into weeks. Elena taught the cubs how to find edible plants in the cave system. She taught them how to purify water using the ship's damaged filtration unit. She taught them simple human games to keep them busy and happy. And every night she would tell them stories. Stories about Earth, about forests and oceans and cities filled with millions of humans. The cubs listened with wonder in their eyes. But the moon was dangerous. And danger came without warning. It happened on the 32nd day. Elena was outside the cave, collecting ice to melt for drinking water. The cubs were playing near the entrance, their laughter echoing across the frozen landscape. Elena smiled as she watched them. For a brief moment, she forgot about the crash, the injuries, the fear that rescue might never come. Then she saw it. The creature emerged from behind a rock formation. It was massive, easily 4 meters tall, with 6 legs and a body covered in thick black scales. Its head was nothing but a mouth, a circular opening filled with rows of spinning teeth. Elena had seen pictures of these things in the ship's database. They were called Ravagers. They were apex predators, and they were always hungry. Elena's blood turned to ice. The cubs had not seen it yet. They were still playing, unaware of the death approaching them. She ran. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life. The Ravager saw her movement and changed direction, now charging toward her instead of the cubs. Elena reached the cave entrance and grabbed the only weapon she had, a piece of metal from the ship that she had sharpened into a spear. She activated the emergency shield generator on her belt, and a shimmering barrier of blue energy appeared in front of her. The cubs screamed when they saw the Ravager. They ran behind Elena, pressing against her legs, trembling with terror. Elena stood between them and the monster. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were shaking. The Ravager was getting closer, its circular mouth spinning, its legs pounding against the frozen ground. She had never faced anything like this. She was a cargo specialist, not a fighter. She was just a normal human woman who worked on transport ships. The Ravager attacked. It hit the shield with incredible force. Elena felt the impact travel through her entire body. The shield generator screamed with warning sounds. The blue barrier flickered. The Ravager pulled back and attacked again, and again. Each time, the shield grew weaker. Each time, Elena felt her strength fading. On the 5th attack, the generator exploded. The shield disappeared. Elena was thrown backward, landing hard on the frozen ground. The spear flew from her hand and landed somewhere in the darkness. She tried to get up, but her body would not respond. She was too weak, too injured, too exhausted from weeks of survival. The Ravager stood over her. Its mouth opened wide. Elena could see down its throat, could see the spinning teeth waiting to tear her apart. In that moment, she felt something she had been fighting against since the crash. She felt fear, real, overwhelming, consuming fear. A sound escaped her lips, a whimper, a cry, the sound a frightened child makes when they wake up from a nightmare. She was going to die on this frozen moon, and the cubs would die with her. She had failed them. She had failed to protect them. But then something unexpected happened. Kira, the brave cub with the torn ear, ran forward. She stood between Elena and the Ravager, her small body shaking but her stance firm. She bared her tiny teeth at the massive predator and made a sound that Elena had never heard before. It was a growl, a warning, a challenge. One by one, the other cubs joined her. Thomas stood on Kira's left, his fur standing straight up. Sasha stood on her right, her eyes filled with a fire that Elena had never seen. The remaining 4 cubs completed the circle, surrounding Elena's fallen body, facing outward toward the Ravager. 7 small cubs, no bigger than human toddlers, standing against a monster that could kill them all in seconds. The Ravager hesitated. It had never encountered prey that did not run. It had never seen small creatures stand and fight instead of flee. This was not normal behavior. This was not how prey was supposed to act. The cubs did not attack. They did not run. They simply stood there, creating a living shield around their protector. Elena watched through tear-filled eyes. These children, these alien cubs who had every reason to fear her, who had lost everything and everyone, were now risking their lives to protect her. She thought about all the stories she had heard about humans being dangerous and scary. She thought about how the cubs had first looked at her with terror in their eyes. And she realized something. They were not protecting a human. They were not protecting an alien. They were protecting their family, because that is what she had become to them. family. Something broke inside Elena. Not broke in a bad way. More like a wall breaking, a barrier falling, a door opening that had been locked for a very long time. The fear did not disappear. The fear was still there, living inside her chest like a cold weight. But now there was something else too. Something stronger. She reached out and grabbed her spear. Her broken arm screamed with agony, but she ignored it. She pushed herself up from the ground. First to her knees, then to her feet. She was shaking. Her whole body was shaking. But she was standing. She walked forward, pushing through the circle of cubs. She stood in front of them, raising the spear in her good hand. Her voice was quiet at first, barely a whisper. Then she screamed. It was not a word. It was not a battle cry. It was the sound of every fear, every doubt, every moment of weakness being released all at once. It was the sound of a mother protecting her children. It was the sound that humans had been making since the beginning of their history, whenever they faced something that wanted to hurt the ones they loved. The Ravager took a step back. Elena took a step forward. The cubs, still standing behind her, began to make their own sounds, 7 small voices joining one larger voice. A family. United against the darkness. The Ravager turned and ran. Elena stood there watching the creature disappear into the frozen distance. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees. The cubs immediately surrounded her, pressing against her, licking her face, making their happy sounds. She gathered them in her arms, holding them as tightly as she could. Rescue came 2 weeks later. A Karathi military vessel picked up the emergency signal that Elena had finally managed to repair. When the soldiers entered the cave, they found a strange sight. A human woman surrounded by 7 Karathi cubs, all of them sleeping peacefully together. The story spread across the galaxy. It was told in Karathi homes, in human colonies, in alien worlds that had never met either species. The story of the human who protected cubs that were not her own. The story of cubs who protected a human when she could no longer protect herself. The story of fear being replaced by love. Elena adopted all 7 cubs. The Karathi government did not just allow it, they celebrated it. There was a ceremony, a festival, a day of remembrance for what had happened on that frozen moon. Years later, when journalists asked Kira why she had stepped forward that day, why she had been the first to stand against the Ravager, she gave a simple answer. She had watched Elena stand between them and death every single day since the crash. She had watched the human put the cubs before herself, over and over again. She had learned what courage looked like, what love looked like, what family meant. When Elena's shield fell, it was simply their turn to be the shield. And when Elena raised it again, they raised it together.